to the cloud. All right. And John, I am going to see if I can make you a co-host just so that in case I get booted out for whatever reason.
Yep.
All right. I think that should be all set. All right. So I see everyone introducing themselves. Thank you very much. Hey, Xiao Bang, I see you. And John Locke and a friend from Texas A&M, Sarah. Hey, everybody. So I'm very excited to be here to talk with you. I'm going to stop looking at the chat so I can focus here. To talk with you about OSCQR and regular and substantive interaction. And so let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. First of all, this link that John will put in the chat for you will take you to a Google that has the PDF of the slides that I'm showing, and also a document that has all of the links that I'm going to be showing. So like I said, so you don't have to worry about capturing any of the links. And so this big old link right here is the one that John will post in the chat that you can keep and have access to the presentation and the links. So that's, I want to get that out of the way first. And then in terms of the agenda for today, I'm going to give a brief overview of OSCQR for those who may not be familiar with it. This presentation is not about how to use OSCQR or how to do course reviews. It's about regular and substantive interaction. So it sort of assumes familiarity with OSCQR, which is the SUNY online course quality rubric, and OSCQR, as you may know, is not just a rubric, but it's a set of tools and it's a set of resources that support quality in online course design. So I'll give you a brief overview of that. Then we'll dive right into talking about what RSI is, some definitions, and some details about precisely what the regulation is about. And then we're going to go into some OSCQR standards and talk about how OSCQR can either directly support RSI or can be used to leverage, can be leveraged to support RSI. So let's just dive in. You may be aware that OSCQR, we have a partnership with the Online Learning Consortium, and this is sort of a historical overview of the genesis of OSCQR. Just as an FYI, in case you are curious, we started back in 2013. And the latest version was released in August 2021, and that's this new regular and substantive interaction version. And we maintain and continue our partnership with OLC on OSCQR, and there are thousands of people using OSCQR now all over the world, and we continue to maintain and update and keep that relationship with OLC on OSCQR. Let's see. So I don't know if you have had a chance to see this video, but I'm not going to show it because it's 5 minutes and I don't want to take the time to show it, but I want to mention it to you. It's in YouTube and the link is on that page. That here, this page with all the links, it's right there. Down here in the overview section, it's here. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of it in case you, want kind of an overview yourself of what OSCQR is and does. Or if you want to share it with either faculty or with your administrators to give like a very good, concise overview of what OSCQR is and what it does. And we've updated it for the new version version. So it's a really good thing to have and to know about, so that you can, if you need to, share it with folks who might not know as much as you do about OSCQR. So OSCQR is, as I mentioned, not just a rubric, but it's also a set of tools and resources and a companion website with information to guide and support whatever type of course quality review you may be using at your institution. And it's intentionally designed to be flexible, to accommodate to any model. So, everything from more formal instructional designer course quality reviews to more informal self-assessments by faculty themselves. And so the rubric is a rubric, and it comes in two formats. It's a PDF that you can download from OLC, and it's also an online interactive rubric that has some additional features and functionality that make it online and interactive. And then no, I just lost my train of thought. So it's it's the rubric, the tools, the online tools, as well as this companion website that is intended to be used alongside the rubric to provide additional information, whether you're an instructional designer or an instructor looking to review and improve certain aspects of the design of your online course. Here on the About page, I just want to point you to the About OSCQR page, where you'll find that timeline that I mentioned. You'll find, a statement about our partnership. And then here are some statistics and numbers about who's using OSCQR, in case you're interested and want to share that with anybody, or in case you're interested yourself. All right, so as I said, we started back in 2013, 2014 with the notion to develop OSCQR, and there was a team back then. All of the people who have had a hand in OSCQR are all documented on this acknowledgements page. So if you're interested to see who all has contributed, you can come to the acknowledgements page. The latest version, the OSCQR 4.0 team, is listed there at the top, so that you can see who had their hands in which piece of this new version of OSCQR 4.0. I also wanted to share with you the page where you can get OSCQR, which you may already be familiar with. You can download it from OLC, but if you want the interactive versions, you would generate it here, and it'll bring up a form that asks you for your name and your email address and the name of your course. And then you can get a copy of the interactive version of the rubric or the dashboard. Then here's a copy of the, this is what you get if you download it from OLC. This is the PDF version of it. And, it's a fillable PDF, and it links to standards, and there are links here that'll go to RSI pages. And so it's interactive in the sense that it's a clickable, fillable PDF, but the version that is the actual interactive online one is much more interactive. I'll show you that one now. So this is the online interactive version of the rubric, and you'll see here it looks very similar to the PDF version, but as you can see, it's online. And it does a number of cool things in addition to giving you some prompts and linking to the actual web page that goes with that particular standard. It also supports multiple people doing reviews. You could use it just for one person doing a review, just ignore the other tabs, but it supports, multiple people doing the reviews, and then it aggregates all of the input into an action plan that helps an instructional designer or an instructor estimate how much time it'll take to fix the things that have been identified and whether or not those things are important or essential. So that's in a nutshell the interactive version. The dashboard is intended for larger scale online course quality efforts. So if you are a manager of instructional designers or the director of online teaching and learning, and you want to do a larger initiative to address, let's say, RSI with a number of courses or a particular program, this dashboard can help you manage that. It's a dashboard that kind of oversees a number of reviews, so you can generate rubrics for the courses being reviewed, assign instructional designers to it, and track completion and so forth. Just want to mention some of those overview types of information about OSCQR. So now let's go on to talking about why we're here, which is regular and substantive interaction. And I just want to do some definitions here. So this regulation came out in July 2021, I believe, and it is from the US Department of Education, and it has a very specific and narrow scope. It's really intended to help the DOE understand the difference between correspondence courses and distance education courses for the purposes of financial aid. Like, that is the very narrow scope that it has. So it really is not saying anything about quality, or it's not just about quality. The only thing that contributes to quality, it's really to help the DOE determine whether or not a course or a program or an institution is delivering distance education courses or correspondence courses, because correspondence courses are not eligible for financial aid. So the definition is here, and you can see, my citation is there if you're interested in following any of these little breadcrumbs. But they're talking about distance education being one where the instruction's delivered by one or more types of technology. It's delivered to students who are not with the instructor physically, and these technologies support regular and substantive interaction between the students and the instructor, and that could be synchronously or asynchronously. So that's how they define distance education. And then here is the issue, the narrow scope, which is that, they are trying to understand the difference between correspondence courses and distance education courses in order to participate in Title V programs. So again, there's your citation if you're interested in learning more.
Alex, can I stop you for a minute?
Yeah.
Sorry, it looks like the HVCC group, which is the other one showing your picture, is stuck on the Get OSCQR slide, but I am seeing institutional compliance on my slide. And I just wanted to make sure everyone else is seeing institutional compliance as opposed to a slide that says Get OSCQR.
Huh.
Yes, I'm seeing institutional compliance as well.
Thank you.
Did it freeze off? Maybe if they, should I stop sharing and then reshare maybe?
Sure, give that a try.
And
we'll see if the HVCC group
all right.
Screen updates.
Did that help?
It went by too quick here. It says it may be their browser, so they say carry on.
Okay. All right. All right. So hopefully it'll resolve. So in terms of institutional compliance, there's 5 areas that they've identified that are important at the institutional level. So when you read the actual letter of the regulation, it has to be delivered. The instruction has to be delivered by appropriate forms of media. The instructors meet the requirements from the institution's accreditors for subject matter instruction. Instructors engage in at least 2 forms of substantive interaction, and I'll go into detail on what that is in a sec. And the institution has established scheduled and predictable opportunities for RSI and has expectations that the instructor will monitor student engagement and substantively engage with students based on that monitoring. And then the instructors are responsive to requests for instructional support from students. So that's the institutional level you know, what am I trying to say here? That at the institutional level, that's what you are responsible for in terms of compliance. And again, if you want to read the letter of the regulation, it's at this link and on that page, and you'll have a copy of the slides if you want to drill down there. All right, so let's define regular. So according to their definition, regular means providing the opportunity for substantive interactions with the student on a predictable and scheduled basis commensurate with the length of time and the amount of content in the course or competency, and monitoring the student's academic engagement and success, and ensuring that an instructor is responsible for promptly and proactively engaging in the substantive interaction with the student when needed on the basis of such monitoring or upon request. So this is important at the faculty and instructional designer levels to really build awareness about what that regular part of this regulation means. And again, in the context of the overall regulation, which has to do with being able to distinguish between correspondence courses and distance education courses. And, you know, the truth is here in SUNY, and I know we have friends from outside of SUNY, but here in SUNY, I have never seen, to my knowledge, I have never seen a true correspondence course. The instructional design and the way that online courses are designed and delivered, it's not correspondence. There is interaction, and the underlying you know, pedagogical approach has to do with a lot of interaction and engagement, whether it's synchronous online or asynchronous online, happening not only with the instructor and from the instructor to the student and from the student back to the instructor, but also between students. So the underlying pedagogical framework is social constructivism, right? Where we learn in both independently as well as in collaboration with others. However, for the purposes of this regulation, it's important that faculty and instructional designers be aware of this aspect of the regulation and the requirements or the responsibility for ensuring that if you are called on to demonstrate that your course complies, that you would be able to point to some things in your course and you'd have thought about that in advance, or you'd have planned for that in advance. All right, let's go on to substantive. The definition of substantive is engaging students in teaching and learning assessment consistent with the content under discussion and includes at least 2 of the following. Now, when you read these, and if you are from that, you know, pedagogical perspective that learning happens in collaboration and is constructed, you know, by interacting with the content, interacting with the instructor, and interacting with other students, then this stuff, you're already doing it, right? You're already doing this. And I would bet money marbles with chalk that everyone in this room and in SUNY is doing this. Direct instruction, assessing and providing feedback on student coursework, providing information or responding to questions, facilitating group discussion, and other instructional activities that are approved either by the institution or the accrediting body. So that's the definition of substantive. So now let's talk about the other operative words here, which are scheduled and predictable. And so it really needs to be, in order to be in compliance with this regulation, it needs to be crystal clear that it's scheduled and that it happens in a predictable, consistent, systematic way. And so some examples, for example, one of the things you could do is specifically have some language in your syllabus that that points to how it's scheduled and predictable. So you can expect feedback on assignments 1 week from the due date. If you have questions on your assignment, feedback, or need extra help, I'm available. Office hours, I'm available every day via Zoom, and use the Calendly thing. These are just examples of how you can, in your syllabus, put some statements that that point to how your interaction with the students is scheduled and predictable. And there's other ways to do this, right? Those are not the only ways. And this is not saying that, as I said earlier, I think RSI is not the only thing that an institution, an instructional designer, or an instructor should be doing in a high quality online course. It's just talking about that particular regulation and how to make sure that everyone's aware of it, and that there are things that you can point to that show that you are in compliance. So regular and substantive interaction must be with an instructor as defined by the institution's accreditor. It has to be initiated by the instructor. It has to be scheduled and predictable, and it has to be academic in nature and relevant to the course. So for example, an ice-breaking activity that is not academic in nature, even if it's initiated by the instructor and predictable and scheduled, is not RSI. If a student contacts the instructor and the instructor spends quite a bit of time with that student, giving them help or whatever, that is not RSI because it was initiated by the student. If the student has a great deal of interaction with a graduate assistant or a teaching assistant in a course, that is not RSI. It has to be with the instructor. So just, to kind of wrap your head around this, this doesn't say that every interaction has to be initiated by the instructor. It doesn't say that everything has to be scheduled and predictable, or even that everything should be academic. You want to have an ice-breaking activity, and maybe it's not academic, right? Or you want to have maybe a class community area where people can talk about things that are not specifically germane to the content of the course. So those things are important for social presence and to establish trust and to establish a sense of community across the learners and with the instructor. So it's not saying don't do those things. It's just saying that for this specific regulation, these are the things that count. These are the things they would be looking for. And these are the things you need to make sure are designed into the course and that the instructor is aware of and that the institution is also aware of. All right. Okay, so let's go through, let me just see where I am. Yeah, let's go through some of these web pages so that I can show you on the OSCQR website where I have information that I think is important for you to know about. And this illustration was designed by our friends at Empire State College, and I really love it because RSI is a rather new regulation. There is, some not controversy, but some questions about how it's being interpreted and implemented. And so because it's new, it's still sort of, being questioned and being clarified. So I would expect that there might be, at some point in the future, some additional clarifications to the regulation itself. Some people currently very narrowly interpret RSI, and I take a bit of a broader, it's not black and white, I think. And so, so this graphic helps to illustrate that sort of the shades of RSI, right? So you have all over here on the frowny face, you have correspondence education, and then video lectures, and then weekly assignments with due dates, and it's starting to get less frowny face, and then graded assignments without feedback. And then you start tipping into the smiley face with graded assignments with feedback, weekly announcements explaining content, video lectures with discussions that are associated, office hours, instructor initiated discussions, and that's where you fall into the distance education, really happy face. So I like this graphic. I think it makes it something, it makes it clearer, I think, what we're talking about here, to distinguish between correspondence and distance, and to help explain sort of this dashboard of types of content presentation and associated interaction that contribute to RSI. All right, so here's some information, some of which I've talked about already. This was it was July 1st, not the end of July 2021. Here are our definitions and some of the details about, the instructor level awareness that needs to be there. And then there's a bunch of links that you can check out that I have on all of the pages that are related to RSI. Let me go over here to the standards. So with this group back in the summer of 2021, we met with, we pulled together this group from across SUNY, and we started by, reading and understanding the regulation, and then looking at OSCQR and pulling out standards that we thought, could contribute or be used to support RSI in some way. And we identified these standards as standards that specifically address RSI in our broad interpretation of regular and substantive interaction. And we identified these standards that under that same interpretation can be used to leverage. So they don't directly support RSI according to our view, but they can be used, they can be leveraged to support RSI. And so what we did was, we identified all of these standards, and then we went through them and but we looked at the language of the standard itself and determined whether or not it needed any updating to the actual language of the standard. And then within the standard, we updated the standard itself to directly target and articulate aspects of it that are either directly related to, or can be leveraged to support RSI. So let me show you this page here. Is this the one? No, this is the one. Yeah, here we go. So this is standard 2, and standard 2 is one of the ones that can directly, that we determined could directly support RSI. And you'll see there's a little RSI icon here, the little dashboard that is on every standard that is related to RSI. You'll see that little dashboard, and you'll see this language here. it says predictable. This is one of the ones that we updated to use some of the language from the regulation and to kind of, put a fine point and connection on it. And then you'll see on the standards that have, that we've determined are associated with RSI, you'll see this section called regular and substantive interaction, again with the dashboard, and then it'll actually, state how this standard supports RSI, and then it'll give you some ideas for refreshing the course, and some of them will be associated with RSI and some of them will just be in general about this particular standard. And so for this one, which is about providing an overall orientation and module level overviews to make course content, activities, assignments, due dates, interactions, assessments predictable and easy to find. It's the way that we've interpreted this to support RSI is that what you can do is to direct your students to ask questions about, this is like at the start of the course when they're reading the overview either of the course or of the or at the module level about all of the stuff that they're being asked to do, that there be a companion space that is initiated by the instructor for students to ask questions and to interact with the instructor on the on the overview and the topics that are, described as part of either the course overview or the module level overview. And that can be done in a simple discussion forum. And it's also, this is just general good practice as well. And then having specific or stating either in the syllabus or within the documentation where this information is presented, typically in the course information documents in an online course, the instructor could post something that said, to schedule a specific time with the instructor or to create an asynchronous discussion that is, specifically the intent is for the instructor to interact with the students on these particular course overview documents or module level documents that would cement that it's, in compliance or demonstrating regular and substantive interaction. So all of the standards that I showed here, all of these are set up in that same way. They'll have the icon, they'll have the section, and they'll have suggestions for how you might be able to, illustrate RSI in under the context of that particular standard. All right, I missed a couple of things here. I want to make sure that you see under this menu item, regular and substantive interaction, you have the list of standards, you have how OSCQR supports RSI. I have a document, a page here on the website of what's new. And so that basically describes, the format of the pages with the little icon and everything. And then I have a references and resources page. So again, if you wanted to read the actual regulation, I have it in a couple of different links here. In this one, it's on page 339, and the other one, it was on like page 5,000 something. I have that one in here somewhere too. So if you're interested in reading more about it, and I continue to add things to this page as they become available. And you'll see here, this is a link roll that I also update whenever I come across something that pertains to RSI. So you'll see fresh content here periodically. All right, but now the change log. Yeah, I want to show you here under Get OSCQR, there's a change log. And so here it'll show you what the original standard was, how it was stated, and then what we changed it to. So for standard 2, it was changed from an orientation or overview as provided for the course overall, as well as in each module, and learners know how to navigate and what tasks are due. That was changed to course provides an overall orientation or overview, as well as module level overviews to make course content, activities, assignments, due dates, interactions, and assessments predictable and easy to navigate and find. And so I have that here posted for all of them, what it was and what it was changed to. For any of the ones that we changed for this iteration of OSCQR, it's all documented here. I've also documented any changes in general that we've made. And I went back as far as I could remember when I set this up. All right, let's go on and look at some selected standards so you can see some of, kind of see it in practice.
Alex, can I interrupt you here for a second?
Yeah.
Are we leaving enough time for questions? There is a couple that I've recorded from the chat, and there's some folks who want to ask verbal questions.
Yeah, and yeah, why don't we go to questions, John, since we're at 12:40. Yep.
Thank you. Simone asked, I missed where you said the slides were located. And I don't believe I had that link in my.
So if you go to this URL, you will get to this Google folder. And in this Google folder are the slides and the links.
I did put, sorry, Alex, my misunderstanding. I did put that in at the beginning.
Yeah, cool. All right, what else, John?
Will this apply to hybrid and high flex courses or strictly online courses? And that's a question for Tracy.
Such a good question. I don't know the answer to that, so I'm going to have to find out. And I believe, based on what I know, that right now it's talking about fully online and fully synchronous or asynchronous courses. I don't know about blended. My assumption would be, because you're meeting in a blended course face-to-face, that it would not apply, but I don't know. What I said at one point was good online teaching practices already do this stuff, right? So if you have a blended or a high flex course that have any online components, you should be thinking about, in terms of good practices, there are, these effective practices of having interaction with the instructor and initiated by the instructor are part of the good practices that we all already know. So incorporating them is part of what I would assume you are already doing. So yeah, I mean, I can try and find out. But off the top of my head, I would say that this is really intended, because it's intended to distinguish between correspondence courses and distance education, where there is, remember at the beginning of the slide, it said no interaction. I can't remember where it was. Support regular and substantive interaction between students and the instructors, either synchronously or asynchronously. Online, not face-to-face, right? All right, so I think that it's a pretty safe bet to say that. I hadn't been asked that question before, but I will check on it.
So
all right, what else? What else?
I have one more written one, and then Naren has their hand up. So what are asynchronous examples of RSI for asynchronous courses? And that's from Soteria.
Asynchronous examples of RSI. Okay, so for example, Let's go to this one, standard 3. The course includes a course information area and syllabus that make course expectations clear and findable. So in an asynchronous course, you want to have information, syllabus information about the course that's very clear and easy to find. And within the course information or the syllabus area, you could, for example, and I'll show you what I've developed as part of our, as part of OSCQR. This is a template for a syllabus. And what's cool about this template is you'll see every element is associated with an OSCQR standard, right? And then you'll further see that I have a section that is about regular and substantive interaction. So in an asynchronous course in your syllabus, you might want to have a section in the syllabus that says actually regular and substantive interaction, and then that says something about how the instructor is going to support regular and substantive interaction in the course. So that is one example. Another example would be it as a companion to the course information area of your course. You would have a discussion that the instructor initiated, the instructor created it, and says, if you have any questions about this course, ask your questions here. And that's, part of the introductory activities of the asynchronous online course. So it's initiated by the instructor, it's scheduled, and it's predictable. And it is the instructor soliciting, questions from the students. And so it's on the student to ask a question. And if the student does ask a question, it's on the instructor to be prompt and responsive to those questions. And that's one example. That's another example of how in an asynchronous course you would promote or support RSI. And I think it's as easy as that, right? It has to be initiated by the instructor, and it has to be scheduled and predictable. And so with any activity, let's say it's a written assignment, in order to make that in compliance, if that's what you wanted to do, you don't have to do it with everything. But if you wanted to, for example, for your written assignments, add an element of RSI, what you would do is you would, tell the students that after they submit their assignment, they're going to get feedback from you, and tell them how long approximately, let's say within 2 weeks of the due date, and then there would be, if it's asynchronous, there would be a discussion that says, if you have any questions about the feedback you received, this is where you would post those questions. And you could set that up to be private, or you could set that up to be public, or you could set it up so that it was a, they'd call into your synchronous office hours to get their feedback and their help. There's lots of ways you could do it, but the key is that it's initiated by the instructor, and it's scheduled and predictable and associated with the academic content of the course.
Alex, we have thank you, Alex. We have a question from Naren.
Okay.
Hi, Alexandra. This is Nareen Pedibutla. I am from the SUNY Polytechnic
Yes,
Institute.
I know you. How are you?
Very good. It's good to be here. Thank you for conducting this webinar.
Yes, yes.
This is a follow-up question I'd asked, similar to what I'd asked last year on the same kind of webinar on RSI and OSCQR. I've been looking at this. I've read the regulations quite a few times, but the one thing that I see in the guidance from the U.S. Department of Education is that it's not just about regular and substantive, it's also about the interaction.
Yeah.
And the regulations lay a lot of stress on this concept of clock hour, and even for asynchronous courses. So if you look at the guidance, that sort of tells us the reasoning behind why those regulations were put in place. And one of the things that tells us is that, like an on-campus, face-to-face, in-person course, they do expect for each credit hour to have 1 hour of this contact or interaction between the student and the instructor. So what's going on with the content is part of not that 1 hour, but 2 hours that are typically recommended for each credit hour for a course. So for typically per week, for a 4-credit course, for example, the expectation is that there is 50 to 60 minutes per credit hour interaction between the student and the instructor. And if you look at the guidance, I'm happy to provide the link in the chat. There's a presentation that was given by folks from the US Department of Education in early 2021 that talks about the use of technology to monitor this for an asynchronous course. So the issue with just saying scheduled and predictable is that it doesn't look at the time of interaction on a weekly basis for, let's say, a 15-week course or a 7-week or 8-week course. So I just want to know what your thoughts on that. Let me share the link in the chat.
Yeah, sure. And Nareen, I also posted a link in the chat that that helps to give some understanding of contact hours and an estimate of time on task where you're looking at an online asynchronous course. And I guess I'm just already assuming that, you know, that calculation has been done. So, you know, when you're designing an online course, you're thinking about the amount of content that is being presented and how long it takes to consume that, whether it's reading offline or reading online or watching videos or listening to podcasts or whatever it is, and that you are also taking into consideration the activities and interaction that are taking place, whether that's online asynchronous discussion or face-to-face synchronous discussion, or whether that has to do with group activities. So you are calculating as you're designing the content, the interaction, and the mechanisms for getting feedback, you know, for assessment, that you are calculating the hours, right? In order to understand, you know, whether or not you are, you know, essentially doing a course and a half, or whether you're doing an actual course. So an instructional designer and an instructor need to think about that time, right? And there are some tools that I have here. This one is my favorite one, that can help an instructor and an instructional designer do some of that estimating in terms of, you know, you type, this is dynamic, you type in the number of weeks, the number of pages, the density, what the difficulty, and then it'll give you over here an estimate of hours, for example, right? So, yeah. Question?
Yeah, so if you look at that guidance presentation that I posted in that in the chat, there is one slide, for example, and there are a couple of other places where this is what they say. For clock hour monitoring, it says processes that are not acceptable for monitoring clock hours includes awarding clock hours based on estimates of completed work. I'm familiar with this Wake Forest University calculator,
Yep.
And it says, for example, awarding clock hours based on estimates of completed work is not acceptable. For example, a student completes a project and the school assigns a certain number of clock hours based on the average time it takes the students to complete the assignment. So if you look at that presentation, it really goes into the need for the instructor, the university, the institution to know what is the amount of interaction that is commensurate with that credit hours. It's 2 credit or 4 credit or 3 credit course. So my question was basically about interaction. How is interaction considered in this framework? Because it looks like clock hour is something that's missing from these OSCQR standards that's been discussed here.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to try and understand that link better that you posted and how it relates to RSI and the regulation and you know, what that then means in terms of course design. I feel like, you know, with OSCQR and with RSI, we have done the best that we can to build awareness about the regulation, to help institutions understand, you know, what they need to understand, to help instructional designers, you know, understand some of the ways that they can support faculty or course designs, and then to build awareness amongst faculty as well. Like I said, Noreen, I think that, you know, in your course, I am sure that you are in compliance, you know, because you are incredibly conscientious and you're thinking about these things and asking these types of questions. And no doubt you, I believe that you've been teaching online for some time, and that you have incorporated many of the effective practices that that are known to contribute not only to, you know, RSI, but just in general to high quality online interaction and instruction. So, so this kind of like very, you know, deep thinking about it, I just need to know and understand a little bit more about it in order to be able to say whether or not or how, you know, Oscar either, you know, falls short or can be used to meet whatever the issue is with the contact hours.
Alex, we have a couple more quick questions, and we are 9 minutes over time. Some folks have dropped off already. But we have, what % of student posts in a discussion forum we should reply to? And that's from Maria.
Oh, okay. So, you know, that depends, right? Like if you're thinking about straight up just quality without thinking about RSI, in my own instruction, in the beginning of my course, I probably interact with every student in the first couple of discussions, right? But as the course evolves, I cede control of the interaction to the students, so that by the end of the course, my students, I still monitor and I grade and read every post, and I will interject to diagnose misperceptions and to provide guidance and clarification, basically by asking questions and asking students to think more deeply if I think they're going in the wrong direction. But by the end of my course, my interaction is minimal, right? And you know, there's a specific, that's intentional, and it is a specific sort of arc of students learning how to substantively interact in a course based on their own interests that have to do with whatever the larger content is that is being discussed in the course. If you were using a discussion to comply with RSI, and it had to do with, let's say, feedback on an assignment, you set up a discussion, you had an asynchronous course, you have an assignment that you've given the students, whether it's a paper or, you know, a collaborative project or something, even if it's a performance or something, whatever the discipline, you would, and you wanted to use that particular thing to demonstrate RSI, you would have a discussion set up to go along with that assignment that was specifically for students to ask questions of the instructor on the feedback that they received for their assignment. And in that case, you would respond to every single student that posted in there. Now, every single student may not ask a question about their grade or their feedback that they got, but if they did, in order to comply with RSI, the instructor would need to be prompt and to respond to every single student in that asks the question. Does that make sense?
We have one last question here.
Thank you. Can I speak?
Oh,
It's Maria. Yeah.
go ahead.
Thank you for that. And I do have, and I know other people might have, a special forum that's for questions related to the course, which is public. And then if it's private, then they have to use my email. As far as the weekly discussion forum, because we do have, you know, depending on 1, 2, 3 questions that the students can choose to respond to. my practice is I usually respond to the initial post that they put there, give them feedback, and then post a question related to that. And then other students can respond to that. But I know that this is not, I choose to because I feel like I have to show the students that I'm there and I interact this way with them. And then in the additional post they put there, I don't respond to unless they answer my question and I thank them. Or if it's something that is not explained well, and then I will intervene and give them the correct explanation or post another video to facilitate the learning. But since I'm also a coordinator of the online program, I get questions from other faculty as to how many of the, let's say, initial posts or total posts of the students should be responding to. Some of them don't do much. I don't expect that everybody will respond to everybody in the first week. So, although I do it. So that's why I wanted to make sure, are there any rules or based on the RSI, that there is a certain percentage minimum that they should interact with the students every week, but especially in the
I
beginning.
think in an online course that is not a correspondence course, the assumption
Online,
is,
asynchronous,
the assumption is that you're interacting with your students.
right?
And that means that you're responding to questions, that you are guiding, that you're asking deeper questions.
Right.
That if a student asks a question within the context of a discussion or asks a question either privately or publicly for assistance or whatever, that you are responding to those things, that you are present and that you know what's going on in the class. It's not that you set up a discussion post and then walk away, right? That is
Definitely. I'm talking about content questions because every
Yeah.
week we post content questions. They have to,
Yeah.
Post initial post and then 2 responses to the classmates or my questions or,
Yeah.
or they can do
So,
more than 3.
so regarding RSI, I have not read that there is a certain percentage that is required.
Okay.
It just that, that it be initiated by the instructor, scheduled and predictable, and that the instructor respond if the student in response to the initiated whatever the instructor initiated, that the instructor respond. Now, that said, in general, unrelated to RSI, the instructor needs to be in the discussion. And whether they're responding to there's some research support out there to not respond to every single student that's in the discussion, to let them help each other and work with each other. So it's up to the instructor. It's up to, there's a lot of, context that's involved, right? What is the discipline? What is the level of the students? With earlier students, if you're lower on Bloom's, going for lower on Bloom's in your discussion, then you might want to interact more because they need more support and more assistance and more guidance. And if they're higher on Bloom's, you may, like a higher level course or the students are more sophisticated, you may want to make sure that you are asking questions that promote deeper thinking, deeper learning, and deeper, self-assessment and awareness of how they are applying what you are talking about in the course, and how they're demonstrating, how they're making their thinking and learning visible to you and everyone else in the class. Yeah.
We are well over time.
We're over time.
And being respectful for everybody who has a 1 o'clock meeting. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to stop the recording now, Alex. And
Thank you, everybody.